This is the Harbor Management Commission Mooring Committee meeting, Wednesday, September 15th, beginning at 10 o'clock. This is an in-person meeting with a recording of the meeting. For our agenda today, we have an update on the waiting list. I actually brought copies for folks of the
great, thank you.
Status of pending applications in the system. Without a harbor master, we're really not able to do anything other than look at what's going on here. So there are 4 folks who have, since the departure of the harbor master, applied to be on the waiting list, and they are not counted in the 72 people who are already there. So there's really a total of 76 right now. 3 of these 4 people, and it doesn't show in this, but one of them hasn't paid. So there's a gap in the dollar signs for one of the applicants. The other 3 have paid the $50. So I would imagine once the harbor master is named that 3 of the 4 would be approved to be put onto the waiting list at this point. The 4th one, the harbor master would need to reach out to see if they wish to pay. What I don't know is if a payment was mailed to the town for $50 and not paid via the online mooring system. So the system would only show payments made through the online mooring system. And if a check payment were made, then the harbor master would have to go into the system and provide that payment credit in the system, and then the town would deposit the money. So I think the way to think about this is we've got probably 76 people on the waiting list at this point. I don't know, is it useful to see this stuff? I mean, this is stuff you can just print screens from the system. This is, I thought you might be interested, what the system looks like with respect to the dashboard, and I can pass that around. So this is showing the various categories. You can see that Online Mooring has added the bulk permit for January of next year for the North Anchorage. It's not obviously got any assignments to it. It's pretty clear to me that there's some cleanup that the new harbor master is going to need to do in the system. There's a problem with the Perry Green moorings showing in a category, I can't remember what it's called, but they're like unidentified or something.
Yeah.
That's not okay. We need to get that cleaned up and corrected. And there's some other miscellaneous cases where things are not properly categorized in the system. I would suggest that an early job of the new harbor master will be to get through the system and get things really in ship shape. They're not quite right. I mean, there's a lot that's well organized, but there's a few miscellaneous things that need to be cleaned up, and Ed didn't really take the time to figure out how to get those resolved. So we've got the breakout in this dashboard shows the waiting list, the people with mooring permits. It's going to break out the North Anchorage single permit. It shows the docked vessel status. And for each one of these in the docked vessels, it shows which ones have been approved, which ones have problems, which ones are pending. So in all of the categories, things are in one of those categories of either pending or approved or rejected, or there's some problem with the record. Ed didn't know if folks had seen that this is really what the harbor master is managing to. It's pretty easy. You just sort of look at, okay, what are these items? You click on any of those categories, and it's showing, for example, 3 items. Takes the harbor right to those 3 records, and he can go in one by one and look at them and decide what he wants to do. So this is the kind of controls that we have today with a system that just didn't exist, and it was just much more difficult for Pat Carroll in the day, and for Lou and for Ed, if they hadn't had a system like this to keep your eyes on the things that are out of sync.
I have to say, what little I've had to use it, it's been very easy. I mean, once you realize, that there are people in the South Anchorage and people in the North Anchorage. I mean, my God, you can find folks pretty quickly. You can edit if you have to. You can, all sorts of things are possible in there within. Yeah.
You can search. You can search by the location. You can search by the name.
Somehow I got entered in twice. Like I applied for a new mooring twice.
Really?
Yeah. But I think that was all in the first year.
Oh.
We've had occasions that Ed had to deal with where people, instead of renewing, applied to be on the waiting list. Jeff, this is the dashboard that's seen on the online mooring system, just the current status for us, and shows the various categories of records in the system. Just thought you'd be interested. I was making the point as you're coming in that there's the new harbor master. There's some cleanup of some miscellaneous cases that needs to be looked into. None of it is super serious, but it would be good to get that cleaner as we go forward.
But I think that it will be easy for the new harbor master to pick up the basic stuff. I mean, I'm not too worried about whether he will be able to get things done in January and February. I mean, maybe not do the cleanup,
Right.
but certainly, approve applications and check for money and documents and stuff.
They have video training stuff that they can do modules on to harbor master can get up to speed on pretty quickly. You've done stuff that I haven't done. You've been sending emails from the system. That's not terribly difficult, I guess.
It's very easy.
Yeah,
It's
so you
very
can do
easy.
bulk emails to like a storm you were able to.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on waiting list and online mooring, issues like that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we understand this, but where it says docked vessel permit, so we don't give a permit.
Yeah, we'd have to have them rename that. It's not a permit, but it's just that they just
Registration.
a report or something like that.
Yeah.
I think we could refer to it as a report. We can have them change that. Again, that's the sort of thing.
One of the cleanup kinds of things,
One of the things I would also say about working with online mooring, from my own experience, you bring something to their attention and they are very fast and pretty thorough in addressing them. They don't always get it just right because of misunderstanding, but it's not for lack of responsiveness. You've had some frustrations with getting access to the system and stuff like that, Jeff, but generally, in terms of fixes, I've found them to be pretty responsive. I don't know what your thoughts are.
They've been pretty communicative, which is good.
You had a problem with distinguishing your access to the records for the tackle versus your personal vessel record access. Do you feel like that's resolved?
To be honest, I've been so busy with other stuff, but that's something I'll check into. And what I thought about maybe doing is using my wife's email first. So she can see the boat stuff, and that just keeps me separated.
Keep more separated, Yeah, I mean, we're going to encounter stuff, and I guess one of the points that, Jeff, I was making to folks as we were interviewing potential harbor master applicants is that because of the complexity of our rules in Southport, they had to do a bunch of customization of the system, and that customization has led to hiccups in the functionality of the system. So it's sort of a problem of our own creation by having such complicated rules that they're trying to program. But I think we're getting pretty close to things working correctly. I'm a little nervous about the changes we just made to the rules and whether we'll find new quirks in the way the system's operating because we just had them program, for example, the whole North Anchorage bulk permit. They've done bulk permits before, but not just like ours, so we'll see how it works.
With regard to the applications for the waiting list, does it still put the people declaring littoral rights at the top of the list?
I believe it does. I can't remember at which point, if it's at the point they apply or at the point that the harbor master approves them in that status. I don't remember.
I thought it was at the point at which the harbor master approved them.
Initially, it was you put in your application and it automatically
went right to the top.
Right.
I don't remember if they fixed that.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't. That's why, and again, the users and the public can see the waiting list, and so to the extent it's an applicant who's applied that way and not showing up there. I actually am not sure that people in the pending status they're not in the waiting list, and so while they're pending, and so I don't think that they're at the top of the list because they just haven't shown up yet.
Right.
So
Right. Good point.
We can investigate that though. Anyway, I'm sure we're going to get more chirping from folks about the system, but by and large, I think the system's doing a good job. I think the vendor's been nice to work with, and they seem responsive. We've had a few hiccups with billings with them, which I think we've talked a little bit about, with the errors in their part in the billings, and that has caused extra work for the finance department and for Betty, but I think we're, by and large, I think things are going pretty well with them. Kim, do you want to report on the Harbor Master appointment process status update?
Sure. We concluded our interviews last night. We interviewed all of the candidates who applied. We asked all of the candidates the same questions. We had we allotted the same amount of time for each of the candidates to respond. We tried to make sure that each of the candidates had an opportunity to get answers to all of their questions. I think we were successful in that regard. And the next step would be for a report of the search committee to the full commission, which will happen on Tuesday at our regularly scheduled meeting. If the commission accepts the recommendations of the search committee, we will then forward a name or names on to the governor for his approval. And I hope that the governor and the folks up in Hartford will be able to act on our recommendation pretty quickly, so that we could have somebody in place well before, months before, I'm hoping, we have to start reaching out to mooring holders to renew their applications in January.
And my hope is that the letter we send could somehow suggest to them the urgency of having a harbor master trained and in place prior to the beginning of the year, because it would be not good for us to be struggling with no harbor master at that point.
But we had all of the candidates brought interesting and diverse set of skills, and so it was a very positive process to learn that those kinds of folks are interested in being the harbor master. So
And public service.
right. So I'm looking forward to having a name to recommend to the governor at the end of the commission meeting next Tuesday. But obviously I don't know for sure, because that's a commission decision and not a search committee decision.
We can call also Mr. Delina, who's been very helpful with us, the governor's council.
Great, Jeff.
Talk a little bit about just what you just mentioned, the importance of having because there is a review process that the state has to go through.
Sure.
Where the potential appointee by the governor to fill out a number of forms and do a background check and so forth.
Right.
And anything that could expedite it.
So
Right.
Once you have the name, we can call Mr. Delina and tell him that where we are.
Great.
The next item I had put on the agenda was just a conversation about the resilience of our mooring tackle in the harbor following now 2 storms that presented tests of the resilience of our equipment. I thought, Jeff, maybe you could brief us on the experience we've had through those storms.
Sure. We first of all, we did take some precautions by moving some boats around. We are still concerned with the mid-wall section of the sort of peanut butter and jelly sandwich bottom that's there, where it's got hard and soft combination of stuff. So the 30-foot plus boats, 2 of them, we moved to different moorings proactively, town moorings proactively, where the holding ground was better, to lighten up the load on that section and to decrease the possibility of moorings moving. That being said, we did have one stern mooring of that cat boat that's in the mid-wall moved a little bit, and we'll put it back in place soon. There wasn't any damage or anything, and it maybe moved 15 feet, but still it did move. So we made note of that, and we'll probably, when we pick that anchor up, see what's going on and see what's in the inventory that we can put down there maybe already. There wasn't any other issues, and we have had very little maintenance calls this year of problems with things. So maybe it's because we don't have a harbor master to report it, I'm not sure, but there doesn't seem to be as many minuscule issues with tie lines and positions and stuff like that. So it's been a good season now.
Great.
How much rain?
I don't remember the number, but it was quite significant, enough to swamp one boat. The boat didn't have a problem, but it took on a lot of water with a bilge pump, I guess, malfunctioned, and so we had to pump it with 2 boats on either side, with a boat on either side, so we were afraid it might turtle. It's amazing how well the harbor did, and the water cleared up relatively fast as well.
Was there much water coming down the Mill River?
There was in the harbor, which had quite a current that day, and a lot of runoff that caused the water to change color, but no damage or anything.
I was way upstream, up by where the lake goes under the Brookside Road, and the river comes down there through Brookside Park there, and it was way up. The river was probably, I don't know, 4 feet, 5 feet up. It was way up in the park, and roaring.
That's an old that's 6 years old, that photo, Jeff.
So Jeff, does that wall mooring that moved, was that scheduled to come up as part of the regular maintenance?
No, that's already been up, freshly put down. It's a small boat, a cat boat,
Right.
which is surprising that it moved, and
Right.
we're not sure why until we pick it up.
Okay.
And then we can report the nature of if there's anything wrong with the anchor itself, or a weld or a shackle or something, but it's rarely that it's deterioration. It's mostly stress from currents and stuff.
Yeah.
That was where our boat used to be, right?
It was 2 back from that, and that is the area that we're concerned with, so that anchor might have to be a little bigger or something. We'll see why it moved.
I can't recall if we addressed the conversation about marking moorings in our phone conversation. Did we do that in the phone conversation?
Jeff, I think, sent a subsequent email about...
Right, maybe we should just recover that now that we're having a live meeting, just so that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's with respect to a complaint we got from Boater. This is one of the fellows who took somebody else's mooring and then was indignant that we wanted them to go to where they had been assigned. But said that if we had marked our moorings, it would have been easier for him to find his proper assigned mooring. So, and then another person who was in the wrong place, a different case, claimed that he was using the lat and long in the online mooring system, which I think the next harbor master should have online moorings indicate to them that those are, just for illustrative purposes, the lats and longs were hand placed, not to represent where the moorings are. But what are our thoughts about the question about marking moorings? Has this been an issue? I know it's been addressed in the past, and we should probably just reconfirm our understanding of not needing marked moorings and the difficulty of having marked moorings in this harbor.
One of the disadvantages, first of all, there's very little turnover. There's maybe 2%, and in past years, those 2% were given a little extra information from the harbor master when a mooring was assigned to them. Most of the time, it's that harbor mooring drawing that we have with a highlighter on which mooring it is. So we haven't had a lot over the history. I've been doing this for 18 seasons now, and have not had a lot of mooring usage or confusion on where to go. Usually they're pretty good there. So that's one of the. Another thing is that suddenly, if you
note to selves, as we're thinking about process steps here for harbor masters, when you're assigning a new mooring to somebody, we should make sure the harbor master gives them much better guidance and maybe even a diagram.
Or even maybe online mooring you'd have to go in there and check, because might show you them if you could use anything that's already in place, such as the online mooring highlighted.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's not literally accurate on that long, but it's certainly, and we also could attach the diagram in online mooring and the image itself, and you and I talked about that, but the harbor master should be alerted, the new one, that this can be an issue, and it just creates snowball effect of people picking up wrong moorings and then leaving other people with, where do I go now, and all that stuff. So.
Another disadvantage is it would make every mooring float mooring spot, parking spot specific, which means that's another 75 or 80 things to keep track of that it's not necessary. Because one of the bigger we tag them when we take them off just for ease, but then we're not limited where they might go, because if there are any changes, we like the flexibility to utilize the town's inventory to the best of the harbor for the town mooring, so that we wouldn't want to be specific on those. Even when on the lift tier, the anchors don't necessarily go back where they started because the boats may change. Even though there's only a 5% change, there's also influences of weather that, you know, that since the bottom keeps changing, then we keep having to repurpose or reallocate to a different spot or as best suited to the harbor.
It seems to me, I guess my thought is that staying with our current process and encouraging the harbor master to be clearer with new assignees of which exact mooring they're supposed to go to, and giving them a diagram as a mailing once in their assignment, you know, at the beginning, is helpful. If it could be sent electronically, great. If it could be done on online mooring, but I agree. I don't think it's critical with the minimal turnover we have to.
Well, and it seems to me that, you know, if the new harbor master has a system for letting new mooring holders know where they're supposed to be. I mean, it could be as simple as putting pink tape on the front and aft balls of the position that could be then taken off after the new person comes and picks it up and knows where he's supposed to go. So I don't see, I mean, if it means that the town has to spend more money on mooring tackle, then and some of it would sit fallow for a couple of years or so while things get switched around. I don't see the benefit of for one or two people if there's another way to help those one or two people.
Well, I know I used to get, and this is a long time ago, I would get an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that would show the different moorings, and it would have the different name. Okay, this is where you belong. We were always at the head, just behind the outlet from the Country Club of Fairfield. So it was always easy. I just went there, and you know, no issues.
I mean, I see how it could be easy to confuse. You don't know where how do you count to number 5, say? Do you count 1, 1, 2, 2? Do you count 1, 2?
And we make it count. The south wall has a 0, so
right.
It starts with currently. So
right.
So that makes it even more challenging for those folks. But
so there needs to be something in addition to just the number, and the harbor master, I'm sure, can figure something out that's pretty simple.
Right. But this is a note to selves. We need to remember to point this out, I think.
Yeah.
I was thinking also, we have, as the new harbor master comes on board, we have some folks who don't have a boat currently and have a mooring assignment, and we need to, there's a rule about how that can work. They got a year to relocate, and but we're going to need to transfer that communication over. We have people who have docks and moorings. They're using a town mooring and they have a dock, and it's not clear to me that they're really using their dock. They are using their mooring. They use the dock almost exclusively and rarely use the mooring. That's not a very effective use and not consistent with our rule either in terms of substantial use during the season. So I don't think that it's our intent as a mooring committee to encourage a harbor master to tolerate somebody using a town mooring only in case storms are coming, otherwise leaving their boat at their dock. That's just not a good use of a limited town mooring. So there's some things that a coming on board harbor master is going to have to grapple with, I think, as we bring that person on board. I mean, and these are just fairness issues. It just, we've got 70, whatever the number is, 76 people waiting, and just doesn't seem fair to have somebody rarely using their mooring for their own boat.
And we have that rule about substantially using their boat, and there's a couple of boats there that don't look like they've been moved since they arrived.
Right. These are all so they're tough conversations to have, but I think we need to,
got 70 people on the waiting list.
Right. It's not fair. The new rules, I don't know if you have any update for us. The new rules have the yacht club maintaining records for the vessels in the 51 slots starting next season, came up in our interviewing process, the question about how, does the club know how it's going to be managing the record keeping of the images of their registration and proof of insurance and all the sort of required documentation for every vessel any night that are on those 51 moorings. Do you guys have any update or thoughts in terms of early thinking about how that's going to get managed for the harbor master to be able to come and see at any given time?
Yeah, we've talked about a few things, but one of them was we would have a paper copy, at least initially, and then have a online copy on our website that we could look at any time, and just make sure that at least weekly we keep that updated. What we will do is, since this is a different thing, we'll have to send out a campaign in advance of the town's permit campaign so that we can be in phase with the rest of the harbor, because it'll take a while since it's new to get all our folks assigned. It'll also be earlier, which makes it tougher for people to make a decision about coming. But at least, hopefully by then, I'll have the 51, by the time the town sends out its notice that it's time for permit, the club would apply for that blanket permit at the same time.
Yeah. Do you think that there's going to be more movement to efficiently use the 51 moorings under the new rules than there have been historically, or is it going to be more like it's been with rare reassignment? Are you going to, we did this to give the club the requested flexibility to maximize the utilization, and I'm just trying to get a sense of what the harbor master is going to encounter in terms of how much the 51 boats in there are going to be different 51 boats than, it won't always be the same 51 boats.
I think we might get 5 boats that are in transition, and we keep track of those, and at any given time we would be able to notify the harbor master upon his request, or if he wants a weekly report or however he wants it, we'll have a handle all the time so we can report as you guys want.
So you don't have a sense that the way that the North Anchorage is getting utilized is going to be dramatically different than it has been historically?
No, other than us being able to report it and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because we only have 51 parking spots.
Right.
Right.
I just didn't know how much the parking spots will be used by more different boats than historically that's been the case.
I think it'd be pretty flat.
Pretty flat, okay. That's good to know. That was it for established matters, unless there's new business stuff. Yeah, Jeff.
Bring this up again, we're getting close to the Corps of Engineers coming to visit the harbor.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, this is an older photo, Jeff, like 6 years old, but these last couple of boats, or the last boat in this string here, did we ever determine whether that's in the...
That would be 0, that's the one I was referring to.
Oh, okay, in the channel, and if so, we would have to relocate that for next year. Again, this can't go by this photo, because it's old.
You asking me?
Yeah.
Well, that would be up to the commission to determine whether or not that most southerly mooring is in the federal anchorage or the federal channel.
Right.
And I think you'd have to do that with a surveyor.
We have the...
Don't we have the coordinates of the...
Yeah, we have the survey that actually raced it for us at one point, so we're just going to have to check. That's something we're talking about available mooring spaces for next year, because we can't have a boat moored in the channel.
In the channel.
No question. My concern is I thought that the 0 mooring was added to that string relatively recently, based on a determination that we could put a mooring there. That's the one that Mr.
Is that Souffle?
That's Souffle, the Hinckley jet boat, right?
Right.
That Mr. Goldstein.
That mooring wasn't really added, it just wasn't counted one of the years when it was when they weren't sure whether it was in the federal channel, so they didn't count it, but the anchor and location is
there.
The same.
Okay, so Jeff Stedman's question is still an active question, is have we confirmed that it's not in the channel? Okay. So that's another thing that we need to get both for the dredging, but also where are we gonna put Mr. Goldstein's boat if that is found to be not proper?
We looked across at it, during the blessing of the fleet. We went down to the town boatyard and looked across, because you can eyeball the end of the federal channel relative to these docks, and we were trying to look across to see if, it looked like certainly the last boat that was there was in the channel, but that's just eyeballing.
Eyeball, yeah.
But that's a matter to.
Right, so there's multiple, I mean, one is we gotta get it out of there. The second question is, what is the harbor master gonna do? I don't think I don't think that the boater should be punished for our.
Absolutely.
You know, we need to find a new place to put that vessel, and I would think that would be job one before we start assigning vacant moorings to anybody else.
The other matter I talked with Justin about is, it was our agreement with the Corps of Engineers years ago that if someone from out of town received a mooring permit, they would be able to get a parking permit for yacht yard. And when I talked with Justin about it, he said, well, they can go on the waiting list, or go high on the waiting list. So we have to resolve what the actual rule is for non-residents who get a mooring permit. Our agreement, I thought, was that they could get a parking space
Well, they should be
parking
able to.
permit, not a parking permit at the town.
Right, right.
So I don't understand what the limited number of permits, I mean, not everybody is parking there all the time, so there should be more permits than there are parking
It's
spaces.
just a question that has to be resolved, because he said they go on a waiting list, and I don't understand.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
I thought it was that we've several times had complaints about people getting ticketed were out of town mooring holders who go down there and then get ticketed, and we go back to the rec department, and somehow that gets.
Yeah, I don't know.
It needs to be just, I think we can resolve it pretty easily, because it's not always filled.
Yeah,
But they need to be able to get a parking permit.
absolutely.
Not wait for one.
Yeah.
We should probably have a meeting with Justin, period. He and I had a conversation about the Perry Green mooring assignments, and he shared with me that with all his other responsibilities, the assignment of the Perry Green moorings is not his top priority. Also, it's difficult for him to find people with vessels within the limited length and draft required for those shallow water moorings, and as a result, we have people on a waiting list for those Perry Green moorings, but vacant moorings also as a result.
Yeah.
And it just feels like there's room for improvement in the efficient management of those Perry Green moorings. And also, the harbor master was not getting information about who he was assigning to those moorings in a timely manner either, so that was problematic.
We just have to attest that the harbor is managed open to all on equal terms, to proceed with the dredging.
Yeah, those are different, though. Those are limited to Fairfield residents.
Yeah, I was jumping back to a discussion about the town boatyard. It's interesting that the town of Greenwich would be working with the Corps to develop a plan for dredging Greenwich Harbor. And when the Corps found out that the town of Greenwich Marina does not allow non-residents to get an opportunity for a slip, they stopped planning for the dredging project.
So maybe we should have a meeting with Justin sooner rather than later.
Okay, so the issues are the parking question, or just access for non-town residents to yacht yard, access to the harbor, and also just to make sure we're on the same page about Perry Green. What he and I talked about was the timing sequence. He's on a much later sequence of assigning permits than the harbor master is under our rules, and so there's a disconnect. His point to me was that our harbor master should just presume that people that were previously assigned to Perry Green mooring should be offered a renewal according to our regular renewal process. And so the only issues are the vacant Perry Green moorings, where he's just not operating at the same pace that our harbor master is in assigning people to those moorings.
It's all manageable to work out.
I just forgot to mention earlier, when we talked about Justin, that I had the pleasure of meeting him and working with him on a recovery of a sunken boat at the north yacht yard dock. We had a Boston whaler with a motor and everything just underneath the dock on top of another dinghy, and it was the recovery was with Yacht Club barge. I was in a launch, drove by, saw that they were doing something, asked them if they wanted help. They said yes. So it was Justin, the Marine Police, and a bunch of volunteers down at YYY working together to recover that vessel, and it was quite a little more than we thought it would be because it was completely sunk. It was I think like a 13 or 14 foot Carolina skiff with a 25 horsepower and a console, and luckily the fuel tank must not have been aboard because there was no fuel concern or spill. But it was nice to meet Justin and work with him and work with the cops down there, and we got the thing recovered. We had to, like I said, it took a little more effort than we thought it would, but we were able to right the vessel and get it in a shape so they could tow it over to the ramp. So that was I think that was a result of all that massive rain that just overwhelmed a couple of the boats.
7.5 inches of rain that night in Randall.
7.5?
Yeah, they measured that at the DPW rain gauge.
Wow.
I was in the Berkshires this Monday, and you would not believe the erosion up there on some of the trails. It's just shocking how much it changed.
Wow.
Do we have any other issues? I have the Perry Green and the parking at Yacht Yard for out-of-town residents. Is there any other Justin-related issues that we need to address? We talked about the reconfiguration potentially of the dockage at Yacht Yard, but I thought we had concluded that he didn't want to make any changes to
I
that.
did not want to make any changes. Bill Hurley's not in today, the town engineer, but there was some discussion about whether we should proceed and include the completion of the last plank at the boat launching ramp. And I don't know if it was you, Jack, or some other commissioners questioned whether that's now a valuable thing to do. And we thought that we should ask Justin because he would know about any complaints or comments from the people who use the ramp. Because
I think it was the vice chair who was making that point.
We need to, I asked Mr. Sternberg if he'd be available towards the end of this week to have a discussion with us from Race. He said no, his wife is expecting their second child any day now, but Devin would be able to talk.
Okay.
Because we charge them with revising their proposal.
Right. Will we see that, do you think, before the end of the week?
I'm hoping so. Bill's not in today. I've been talking with him. And
Okay.
He was agreeable to having a discussion with Mr. Stern, now Devin, and you and I.
Okay. Well, I'd like to have that proposal from Race for before
Yes,
Tuesday, if
yes.
possible.
Yeah, I'll call Devin.
Okay.
After
Great.
the meeting.
I should have mentioned it last night when we saw Devin. I didn't think of it yet.
And then it's not a mooring matter. It was because we're talking about the small harbor improvement grant from the Port Authority, and which is funding our work here, and we still haven't spent that money, not through any fault of our own. But it was suggested to us by the Port Authority that another fundable project is the repair of the Perry Green bulkhead, and that's something that they would consider as part of a grant application. And we don't have a time period yet when they're going to be asking for those applications, but it may be soon. And so that's another topic to discuss with Bill Hurley, because they had an estimate from Race for doing that, and whether that counts as a formal estimate that we can include in our grant application, or whether the town would have to ask for other bids to do that. Bill was going to check on that.
Okay.
But that's not immediate, but if we're thinking about applying for another ship grant, I think we should include the repair and replacement of the Perry Green.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
I thought we had the other issue, to go back to the Justin issues, I thought the other concern that we had was that in order to get a spot at the Yacht Yard dock, that you had to be a town resident. And we had concerns about whether or not the Army Corps would say that that's going to prevent them from participating in the,
That's something, we haven't brought that up yet, because that, in the harbor management plan, that's not one of the agreements we had in the plan. The
okay,
agreement we had in the plan was that if you get a mooring, you're gonna be able to get
Okay.
a parking space.
okay,
Now, whether they change their mind on, the Corps changes their mind, but that was our agreement initially.
okay,
But we need to be prepared to discuss that,
okay,
because in Greenwich, they just stopped the planning for the project when they realized that the town marina was not open to the general public.
well, but it's not absolute, right? So if somebody from out of town gets a mooring,
Yes.
then they're entitled to put a dinghy on that dock to get to there.
That was, we have to work
Good.
that out, and be
Good.
clear, so that we're not stumbling
Yeah,
over
good,
our hands
okay.
or what have you.
Good, good,
That's my understanding.
good,
Yeah. And that's, whatever's in the harbor management plan is what we're obligated to.
good,
Yeah.
excellent,
And we have the town landing, which is actually part of the agreement of the federal navigation project, that there will be a public landing that people can, well, the public can tie up on. And we have the yacht club's provisions for the public too.
right. I actually saw somebody launching a boat from that ramp the other day at very, very low tide. So,
But that's what we have to discuss. And
Yeah.
If that, well,
I mean, he seemed to be able to do it. You know, you go by, not as fast, but,
Yeah, right.
I think I heard a member of the public on. Did somebody on the phone want to make a comment? You're not on mute, so we can take your comment or question. Okay.
okay.
All right. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Good
Yeah.
meeting.